Good evening, everyone. Welcome to HappyMeCareer Coaching Initiatives, episode 15. And today we're going to talk about the topic safe space in coaching. As you know, there are some big posts flying around in social media right now. Now, everybody, tonight's session, please feel free to share your thoughts, drop us a questions, and we'll answer during the session. Okay, sit back and enjoy today's show. Now, before we start, do you often have that moments when you're not sure what to say, especially in an environment where you are asking for answers and people are expecting you to give more context? And we know there are many factors flying, such as ego, pride, fear of judgment, and more. And these are just few major ones that hold us to express freely in that space. And as you know, in coaching, our main objective is to partner with you in the quest to find your own answers to your challenge, your breakthroughs, or simply what we call the aha moments. This can only be done when coaches like us don't just provide that safe space, we ensure it in order to deep dive with you to help you discover the hidden answers you're looking for during the deep dive. Now, like I say, Happy Me Career Coaching Initiatives aims to encourage and evolve change to masses like you and my mindsets and advocate the use of coaching in your development growth. We have many versions of definitions of coaching. And if you have been watching our shows since last year, May 2020, I hope you get a better understanding of how coaching helps and most importantly, why coaching is much needed to help you grow in your own professional and personal development. Now, I think I shall talk less, and I actually wanted to pass the show on to Johny. But before that, tonight, our episode 15, I'm very honored to have invited Johny K. Joseph, a life and executive coach whom I have experienced, to share that coaching space with him. Now, allow me to talk a little bit more about Johny. Right. Hi, Johny. Thanks for coming by.
Hi, Mavis. Thanks for inviting me and thanks for having me here.
Great. Now, Johny has been in the field of coaching, facilitation, and management development for over 30 years in various organizations and in various capacities. Prior to that, he has been in sales and sales management area for over 10 years, being formerly the VP of Learning and Development in IBM India, head of learning in ANC Banking India. He handled the organization's employees' learning development, especially in the areas of leadership, sales, and technical development. Now, Johny, share with us. You've been so amazing, and your always learning attitude has inspired many people around yourself, including myself. So, Johny, would you mind share with us more about yourself, your coaching journey so far, and what are you up to recently?
Yeah. Okay, so thanks for those kind words of introduction, Mavis. And yeah, so my journey, actually, my learning journey started 40 years ago when I finished my formal, academic life. And uh, and I would say that my learning began once I ended my academic life, because I learned a lot through these last 40 years. And the first, as you said, the first 10 years has been in sales. And that's when I realized that selling a product or service requires that in rapport and conversation with the client. And that's when I figured that I started liking this conversation, because I always I'm very fond of having conversations with people, even as a child. And I am in a sales job, and I found myself really enjoying these conversations. And as I started enjoying these conversations, it became a pleasurable process for me to be able to achieve my sales targets. While my colleagues were really struggling to go and make the sales pitch, I used to sit and have conversations with clients, whether it's a CEO of a large public sector organization or a founder of a company or the head of sales and marketing. I've had wonderful and pleasurable conversations, which ended up them being customers of my company and the services that I was selling. So that's how I started my learning and enjoying every moment of my sales role in the first 10 years. And then I had the opportunity of moving into a role which is to be facilitating selling skills programs. As a successful salesperson, I was selected by a company, an international company called Mercury Goldman, to be able to facilitate the sales training programs for their clients. And I started enjoying that because that meant conversations with people in a setting like a training room. And that again was more of trying to explore how else and what else can they do to be able to sell their products and services effortlessly. So, as I'm going through this journey of ICF credentialing, I'm just relating it back to my sales days, and I see that the fact that conversations do make a difference is so connected and resonating even for a sales conversation and a coaching conversation. So that's where I connect the entire journey of my life, starting from a sales job to a sales trainer to facilitating leadership programs and helping people to become more talented and identifying their talent and helping them to realize their potential. I found that conversations are key to these pivotal changes in lives of people. And conversations, when it is an enjoyable process, it becomes a safe and wonderful space for the client or the person who is on the other side to explore without any threatening environment, to say, oh, I can do this. Wow, I didn't realize this. And that's how I see these wonderful people getting to what they want to achieve in their lives. So that's in a nutshell my little journey of the last 40 years, of which 10 years has been in sales, and the remaining for 30 years has been in learning and development, talent management. And I found one thing common is that it's all about conversations.
Very good. And today is so what you have said about conversation is what we are talking about in today's topic, right? About
Mhm.
safe space, to maintain that safe space in coaching and what
Yeah.
that safe space represent. So coaching has always been about the individual self, and you talk about conversations that been carried out, be it whether to a group or be it whether to an individual. Now, with your experience in coaching, what are the key elements to get coaching started then?
Well, first of all, like you mentioned, Mavis, the space between the coach and the coachee is absolutely safe and non-threatening, in a sense that it is very, very exploratory for the client or the coachee. So he or she is able to actually explore and go into their own wonderland without any fear or bias, and just be themselves in that conversation. And when they are in that state, they discover nuggets that they have never discovered in their lives. And they say, wow, I didn't know that I could do this. Wow, I didn't know I could think like this. Wow, I didn't know I can speak like this. So, what happens in the process is they are able to discover their own hidden selves when it becomes a safe space for them to explore. So, it is the process is of exploration in a safe environment, non threatening, and being themselves in that space.
So you talk about exploring that person, letting the person to explore themselves, right? In a
Yes,
non.
yes,
So
yeah.
how much exploration can this safe space provides for the individual to do the exploratory, and because it's a partnership for coaching, right? So how much
Right.
exploration will you all be able to go deep then?
That is the extent to which the client or the coachee wants to go, and it's wonderful to see some of my clients really wanting to go to the depths of the ocean to find out something like a beautiful coral, if I may use an analogy. And if they want to go to that kind of depths, then I just be with them, and provide that space to be safe. And it's so the how much is actually depending on how much the client wants to go.
Mm. So now you're very true is how much it depends on how much the client wants to go, right? And we talk about deep diving into conversations with the
Right.
individuals. Now, as we are talking about that and coaching sessions going on, some are reluctant, even we say to make it work, you need to be open and willing to deep dive.
Mm.
So that safe space you're creating for them, does that
Mm.
even trigger that willingness to deep dive then?
It's like I often use this metaphor, and it's very strongly connecting with me. It's like when I walk into the men's washroom of my office, okay, and I see a lot of mirror, right? When I see a lot of mirror, it gives me that safety to groom myself. Okay, I might be getting ready to go for a meeting in the boardroom, and then I go and stand in front of the mirror, and that is non threatening to me, because the mirror is not going to respond in a way that, hey, Johnny, you're not looking good, or you're already good looking good, so you don't need to do anything. So I just be myself in front of the mirror. And for me, coaching is like that process of no, and me being the coach is being that non-judgmental mirror for the client to come and do whatever he or she wants to do to be able to get what they want.
Mm. So you have brought up one point about being judgmental, right? So
Mm.
now being as a coach, we are non-judgmental to our client. But what if, let's say, our clients are holding, the individuals are holding judgmental on themselves? How are you going to make that space safe enough for them to bring down that judgmental of themselves then?
Right. So that judgmental self of the client is like the frozen meat in the refrigerator. And before we consume or before we cook, we need to do a thawing process. And if that thawing is not done, the frozen food cannot be cooked. Okay, in some dishes. So the coaching process of building that connection between the coach and the client is a kind of thawing process, and I can literally sense the client from being frozen to getting to that room temperature and get unfrozen, if I may use the term. And that is a beautiful moment to experience as a coach, uh, to see the client holding judgments about himself or herself, uh, based on whatever social conditioning that they have, and to say, yeah, actually I can question this. Why should it be like this? Why should I be like this in a social setting? What if I am different? And as I see that client go through that process, it's the thawing process. Okay.
Mm.
And once the meat or food is from the source frozen state, it's thawed enough to the room temperature, then you can do anything that you want to add and cook the dish you want and consume it.
Wow, it's so delicious. I can
Yes.
feel and sense the smells already. Now I
Mm.
love the way you have been using metaphors in our conversations and making us, be very clear of and visualize how this safe space is like.
Yeah.
Now, Johnny, when you've mentioned about mirroring. So
Mm.
in a coaching conversations or in a coaching sessions, it's a partnership. So coaches
Correct.
are we mirror ourselves with the clients, with the individuals. Now, talking about mirroring and talking about judgment. So, how do you feel that, let's say, for example, you're mirroring the individual and the individuals are judgmental of themselves, right? So,
Okay.
how would we able to protect both ourselves as a coach and the individual during the process so that, as we mirror them, we don't get caught up with their
Okay.
judgmental?
Right. So I would like to make a distinction between mirroring and being a mirror.
Mm.
So as a coach, I I'm more focused on being a mirror rather than mirroring. So when I'm just being a mirror is not judgmental. If I'm wearing a white shirt and if there is a black dirt on my shirt, mirror is not going to call me and say, "Hey, Johnny, clean that." So I so as a coach, I just help the client to see that black spot and leave the choice of wanting to clean black spot to the client, and not as a coach tell the client, "Hey, you have to clean that." That's not my uh, definition of being a coach.
Mm. So it's more like, you're partnering in a partnership with them and making them work their way through, right?
And always having the locus of choice and control with the client, and I'm just being a mirror, holding the
Mm.
mirror and say, "Are you able to see?" And if you want to see another angle of yourself, I can hold the mirror in that angle. What you do in front of the mirror is up to you. Mirror does not say, yes, you have to put a little more, whatever, to uh, show up for the next event that you're appearing in the way you want to appear is your choice.
Mm. Very good. So you talk about, control. So when you're controlling that mirror, right? So is it you controlling the mirror, or is it your client, the individuals that is controlling the mirror?
So when the client is wanting to change and look from a different perspective, then I cannot say I will only be like this. So I just change the angle of the mirror, which will enable the client to see from that angle. So coaching is about exploring from different perspectives or different angles of what he or she can become going forward. And another thing that I wanted to share about coaching is always about now and forward, never about the past.
Hmm. Do you need to understand the context of the individuals when you meet them to know their past before you can bring the coaching forward?
Not required.
Not required. Good,
Not at
good,
all.
great. So if let's say, that does that mean that you can ensure also the safeness by only just concentrating the now and moving forward, and how are you ensuring that safeness when you're doing the
Safety.
exploration and
Yeah.
mirroring?
So, ensuring safety has never been a big challenge because right from the word go, the conversational um, process is very, um, if I may say, full of rich with rapport with each other. And if that rapport is not there, the whole coaching process may not go forward.
Mm.
So I think the whole process of building that rapport also gives the kind of space which makes the whole environment very safe for both the client and the coach. So that is one of the competencies that we have learned even in the ICF is rapport and safety.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned about rapport, and it's very intriguing about rapport, where you build that relationship. So someone will they need actually to feel, or how are you going to bridge that rapport building? right from the start. If let's say this client of yours, just get to know you, and you've mentioned about that process of them being that frozen meat and they need thaw. So yeah,
Mm.
how
Yeah.
do you actually inject that safe space for them to thaw themselves then?
So I think that varies from different clients, and there are some clients who strike a good chemistry with me almost instantly. There are some clients who would take about a couple of sessions before we get to that comfort level. So we call that in our coaching parlance either a chemistry session or a discovery session. We discover each other and how comfortable we are with each other to be able to have that conversational comfort.
Mm,
So there is no specific timeline for that.
mm,
In my experience, I've had the instant rapport with some of my clients. I've had even couple of sessions before we connect with each other and build that rapport. And once that rapport is built, then there is it is it's a wonderful and beautiful exploration.
mm. Very good. So once you've built that rapport and the exploratory sessions goes on and you guys are deep dive. So in your observations, what happened when you have achieved such a very safe space, and what happens then that you are able to explore about what really happens when that safe space has achieved.
Once that safe space, it's not at all it's not at all a challenge to get to that safe space. And like I said, different people get to that safe space at different timelines. And once that is reached, it's so fascinating to see how somebody has come with something and then they go back with 10x of the same thing. And that's so fascinating to see, and that gives me the awareness of how powerful the human mind is, to be able to not only realize something but also to realize in quantum leaps of what their hidden potential is. And that's what fascinates me about this whole concept of coaching conversations. And it's wonderful to see how somebody wanted something and they go back with, wow, I didn't know that I can get so much, right? And when I asked him, what are you realizing about yourself? He said, I'm realizing that I never realized this about myself. Okay, so they go back with such wonderful discoveries and insights. And most importantly, I sense sense of urgency to go out and start reaping those by putting some of those realizations into actionables.
That's very good because when you mention about 10x, when they come into that safeness of that space and they achieve 10x from where they came initially, right?
Mm.
So now, does that mean that during that safeness of space that we have achieved, it allows the individuals the moments of being what we call as vulnerable, and be able to really pour the things out so that you guys can go on to discover what this person did not realize themselves.
Right. So this safety of the space that you're talking about is creating a wonderful environment in the coaching conversation, to be able to get the client to actually accept their own vulnerability. And in accepting that vulnerability, they are able to then move past that. Because when the context is not safe, they're always trying to cover up their vulnerability. Whereas
Mm,
when the space becomes safe, they don't need to hide their vulnerability. And once that if I go back to that frozen meat, when it is thawed enough, you can actually separate what is not required from that meat and throw it away before you start cooking the meal. But that won't be possible when the meat is still frozen. So that is what is happening in the coaching space. Actually, if I were to think about what really happens in the coaching space, is for the client to get in touch with the real who of that person and say, hey, this is who I am, and I'm able to accept this who that I am, and therefore I can then focus on what I am good at and take that to my next level. And that really catapults and pivots them to even reach 10x results that they want to achieve in their life, whether it is in their career, whether it is in their relationship with their family members, or whether it's something to do with their social life or any area of it of their life. That's wonderful to see that process in the coaching space.
Hmm, that's very good. So it is about being accepting, willing to accept that vulnerability of ourselves and be willing
Right,
to want to accept who we are,
right,
right?
right,
Now,
right.
there's a questions by George Cherian. Josh was asking, are there any techniques to create safe space then, Johnny?
Techniques, I'm not aware of any techniques. uh, it's about being who you are as a coach. Okay, now this it can be termed as a, thanks George for that question. um, uh, the only thing that I can think of at this point in time is, am I being real as a coach, or am I being pretentious about who I am in the coaching space? So what goes for the client also goes for the coach, right?
Mm,
So if I am being true to myself and I'm being the person who I am in my totality, which includes my vulnerability, I've always noticed and observed that brings about that connection between myself and my client. There is no other technique or tip that I can think of other than being who you are in your own being, and not. So therefore, to me, coaching is not a performance that I do as a coach. It's the lack of it, or the absence of performance.
mm. Wow. Okay, come. Let's it's very interesting when you touch this point about performance of a coach, right?
Mm,
So when you say how to create that safe space, and you explain that is the coach being who they are, the real
mm.
coach, and then you talk about absence of performance of coach. What does this mean?
It means that if somebody were to ask me, if I were to come and be coached by you, what will you do? What will you give me? My answer is, I do not know. What will I give? I have nothing to give as a coach,
Hmm.
right? Therefore, um, it's like me going and asking a mirror in my house, hey, mirror, I'm coming to you. What will you give me if I stand in front of you for 30 minutes? I don't think the mirror can respond to that question. The mirror can only say, I can be a mirror for you. You do what you want in front of me. And I
Wow.
can create that space for you to look at yourself and see what you want to do and how you want to do and by when do you want to do. That's the choice that the coachee makes for himself or herself.
Hmm. That's very good. So now, Johnny, when you say that's a choice for the coachee to make, then and as a coach, we mirror them, right? Okay. And then when will the coachee, the individual that will be enable them to make that decision then?
It is that point of realization is in the mind and being of the client, and I, as a coach, I cannot determine that. I can sense it, I can observe it, I can feel it intuitively, and I can again respond as a mirror saying, I'm noticing that you have a shift in your energy. What is just happening to you? And the client will say, I just got this feeling that, I can see that I am already in that state where I'm doing what I want to do. So that's all I can do. I cannot determine at which point will the client get what the client wants to get.
Hmm. Okay. So these are all the self-discovery moments, right? Now, uh,
Absolutely.
from before, our friend Rukia actually said, asked about what are some things you have discovered yourself as a coach, Johnny? As you coach, sorry. What are
Yeah.
some things you have discovered about yourself as you coach?
Right. Thanks, Rukia, for that question. Um, uh, I think that's a very, very powerful question. The I would be not being authentic if I say that, in my journey of being a coach, um, it's the client who got what they want. The client gets whatever they want. But it's been a wonderful journey for me to discover who I am and what am I doing as a coach and what am I not doing as a coach has been a tremendous journey. And I just can't thank Rukia enough for asking me that question. Uh, even this morning when I woke up, I was not who I am right now before I had those 4 coaching sessions before we started our session. And in those 4 coaching sessions, I discovered what I need to leave behind when I entered the coaching space. Because you introduced me as a person, and I also shared my experience of 40 years of experience. And that is nothing in the coaching space. And with every conversation that I experience as a coach, I'm discovering how that nothingness becomes even more nothing those 40 years of my learning, and I'm starting from zero with this client because that's the only conversation that matters for me and the client in that moment. So that is a big learning for me, and I think that learning took me this while to get to this point, and I do not know how much more I will travel from here to as I move forward in my coaching journey.
Hmm. Wow, amazing. Johnny, you've mentioned about nothingness, that one thing you've learned as you coach, right? You discover about yourself is to leave behind what you have. Now, that nothingness, is that also a prerequisite to ensure a safe space then?
Yeah, so what I'm realizing is that the more I become nothing as I enter into the coaching space, uh, that nothingness then makes me feel non-judgmental, and I'm as curious as the 3-month-old Johnny that I was several years back, and I'm saying, oh, really? And that then. Uh, and I'm learning how to be authentic about it because some of these things can resonate with what I am personally going through in my life. And the moment I bring that in the form of empathy, that then becomes a potential area of judgment because I am just processing my own state and my own issues. So, therefore, this nothingness has helped me to be totally with the client and without any biases and prejudices. In fact, I was listening to my mentor this morning on the YouTube, and he was talking about presence in a coaching space, and he was sharing how the best present or the gift you can give your client is your total unconditional presence. And if I have to be present unconditionally and totally with my client, I have to be that nothing Johnny.
Hmm. Unconditional presence. Wow, that's very powerful. So now, if let's say that you bring nothingness into the conversations so that you have an unconditional presence, so will you still be discovering more about yourself, or is these conversations both, uh, I mean, a partnership with both discovery,
Right,
yourself and
right.
the individuals themselves then?
Okay, so a wonderful question, Mavis. Let me just acknowledge you for that wonderful question. So, this nothingness I'm discovering is not a point of arrival in my journey, it is a journey towards nothingness. Because every time I go in with this mindset of I want to be leaving everything behind, what I know and what I've learned, and I want to be in that state of nothingness, my mind always brings thoughts about, oh, but you know this, Johnny, you know the solution to what this client is struggling with. Why don't you just give that? And I discover that it's not absolutely zero sum game that I can play in that state where I can be absolutely nothing. I can only move towards that nothingness. I don't think I can ever reach that nothingness because my mind is always connecting and resonating. Because for years of learning how to be empathetic with the client, the sheer empathy makes me to connect with that person and then say, oh, listen, I've been through this and I know what to do. And then there is this part of me which says, "Arey, why should I not tell this person to do it this way? It's so simpler." But to hold that back and say, no, I am just a mirror. I want that. It's like, my mentor often uses this metaphor of, you see that little caterpillar struggling in the cocoon, wanting to be the butterfly, and then you say, okay, let me go and help this thing by taking a pair of scissors and helping this butterfly come out. That be the end of that butterfly. And as a coach, do I have the patience and the courage to hold that space for the client as the client is struggling with that vulnerability in the deep part of the ocean, as we spoke earlier, and wait for the client to pick up what the client wants to pick up from the bed of the ocean to come to the surface? What am I being as a coach to be that supportive space provider to help the client come safely to the surface with whatever he or she has found?
Wow, that's that's indeed another powerful explanations. How
Yeah.
you have detailedly explained about being the supportive role. Now, in that supportive role, other than that space and that you were saying to provide that space, right? How is that supportive role playing within that space then?
Well, when the client has a certain want want to go deeper but also has that fear, it's like, when somebody is about to dive into the pool, then they want to dive, at the same time there is a fear which is holding them back. And I think that's when the coach is, the space that the client is getting from this coach is so critical at that moment for the client to take that leap of faith and say, let me jump and find what I can find. And that is a very, very, very important role that the coach plays in that moment. And when that moment occurs, nobody can predict.
Mm,
It is in the here and now of the coaching space.
wow. So in order for that client to overcome that fear, right? So it is for the client to determine when he or she is going to jump and take the leap of faith to jump.
Yes, yes.
So how then, do we as a coach, do we actually encourage them to overcome it, or we work with them to overcome it then?
Um, I would ask the client, what do you want to do now? Do you want to overcome it or do you want to stay with the fear? There are some people say, I want to stay with the fear. And my question is, what is this fear? How is this fear serving you going forward? And and help the client to find out what might be the purpose of holding that fear going forward in the client's life. Because I think if I decide for the client, then that will be based on my, not my nothingness, but by my knowingness. So
Mm.
my nothingness is also the not knowing Johnny as a coach, because that knowing Johnny is knowing what he wants to do, not the client wants. So I leave it to the client to take that decision in that moment, saying, what is it that you want to do now? And when is now the right time for you to do it?
Hmm. So now, Johnny, if let's say it's based on what the client now, right? Okay, do you happen to have experiences where um the client is too negative? You know, humans, all of us are very attracted to negativity, and we get spin off into that infinity hole.
Right.
How, as a coach with nothingness, do we still play along with that and get embroiled to their emotions, or how do we actually create that boundary space and say, hey, I'm pull them back?
No, so whether it is negative or not is not for me to decide.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So whether the shirt that you're wearing for a particular function is matching with the trouser that I'm wearing, it's the mirror never says it doesn't match. I will know when I stand in front of the mirror that this shirt is not matching with this trouser, so I need to either change the trouser or the shirt. So as a coach, I don't even get into the thought of whether it is a negative thought or a positive thought. It's the client's choice.
Mm.
I will ask questions as to how is this thought serving you? And if the client says, I don't want to have this thought, then we will work on how to get that thought removed.
So then, in that case, will you be caught in a trap of being trapped by their emotions then?
That's where I spoke about empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned this from my um, coaching master, that there is something called, you empathize with the client. When you empathize, you are feeling that emotion with the client. And he taught us how to have an empathetic resonance, which means I resonate with what you're going through, and I'm not necessarily going through that. I'm being a mirror. The
Mm.
mirror, if I am looking ugly, I in front of the mirror, I feel emotionally down. Mirror doesn't go down emotionally. Mirror is still the same, right?
Mm.
So that's the difference between empathy and empathetic resonance. And what I how I have internalized it is that feeling detached empathy. How can you have a detached empathy and be an observer of what the client is going through as a mirror? Without the mirror never has any emotions of what the client is looking like or the person in front of it is looking like. So that's what I'm learning, and that's again a response to Rukaya's question again, is that these are wonderful learnings that I've never reflected on in the last so many years, that I have reflected in the last 10, 11, 12 months of my journey of coaching.
Mm. So
Yeah.
it's about detaching. So am I right to say is that what you've mentioned is about detaching your empathy from the client?
Yes. So detaching my, I can feel the emotion of what the client is going through. I can sense it,
Mhm.
and I don't have to necessarily go through it.
Mm-hmm.
myself. And I've found myself, and let me be very open here, I've found myself being caught with the same emotions that are there in my mind, because something which the client has said has triggered off something in my own life, and I get caught with my own emotions. And then how can I be partnering with the client then, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
So that's very true. So how do you actually if you don't detach yourself emotionally, then how are you going to partner with the client, right?
Right.
Correct.
So
So
I yeah. So what is the question?
okay. So I was just about to ask you, then in order for that space to achieve now, if we were to imagine, okay, and if we were to visualize a scenario where the client was very very down and being the mirror for the client, you can't, and you have to detach the emotions because mirror don't feel anything, right?
Right.
And it's just a mirror for the
Right.
client. Then is there a point that silence is also a key to make sure the client and maintain the client's composure so that you
Okay.
can bring
Right.
that space back to bring
Wonderful.
the
Wonderful.
conversation.
Wonderful. Wonderful that you brought this to me, in my experience, and I've also heard this from my other fellow coaches. One of the most powerful questioning that happened or happens in my coaching is the silence.
Is silence a question?
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think?
Wow. Okay. So look here, being silent also can bring forth the client to ask, why are we
Yes.
silent?
Or the client goes deeper and then comes up with something that he or she has found.
Hmm. So if silence is a powerful question, right, will there be a moment where silence becomes awkward and affect the space then?
I've never come across that. Maybe it can be, but I've not experienced it so far, because I keep calibrating as to, for example, if the person with whom I'm sharing the coaching space um, is, I can make out if the client is actually engaged in a thought process by calibrating the facial expressions and the body movements through my long years of 10 plus years of my uh, practicing as a master practitioner in NLP. So that awkwardness is something that I've never come across, because I know that the client is in a deep thought, and then I need to give that space, and I would love to give that space for the client rather than interrupting that thought process at that moment.
Hmm. So you mentioned is that you give them space, not just space for conversations, but a space for them to think, right?
Yes, yes, a lot of space for them to think, and think very deep, think which normally they are not able to do because they are at a very surface level activity based engagement of their mind. Their mind is getting freed, and like the safety space we spoke about earlier in this conversation allows them to go deep, and the deeper they go, the more precious the nugget that they bring back to the surface.
Wow. That's really very a lot of wisdom inside there. So,
Yeah.
you know, if as mentioned earlier, you were mentioning the mind is powerful, right? And if we give them, and absolutely we will give them the space to think, do you think as a coach, do we actually need to assess during that conversation, during that coaching session, how deep they can derail, or how deep the mind can play, and of that client of theirs, and you pull them back? Is there a possibility
No,
like this?
there is. I don't know if there is such need. I've not come across that. So coaching is actually a conversational um, mastery. That's what I've learned, and in that process, the client is always. Um, I don't know if you've gone deep sea diving or So there, what I've noticed. I've not gone, but I've seen that there is a guide who is attached with the person who's diving, and then when the person wants to go back to the surface of the ocean, the guide goes along with that. So in the coaching process, the coach is always there for the client,
Hmm.
and that's all there is that I as a coach will do to support the client. I don't decide when the client will go deep and when to pull the client. One of the things that I have discovered, and it's wonderful to see it in action and again, is that the client has all the resources that he or she wants to do what to achieve what he or she wants to achieve within themselves. There is nothing I need to do. So, again, back to the nothingness as a coach. The client is resourceful enough to do whatever he or she wants to do. Just discovers that, oh, I have it in me. I didn't know that. So, I don't decide when to pull the client back, or the client decides, and I just keep accompanying the client wherever he or she wants to go in the coaching process.
Hmm. That's good.
And that's the
So
safety that we provide in the space. Sorry, I interrupted you.
no, 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 no. Go on. Okay.
Hmm.
So what happens is that when you talk about, and Goplan has actually said about body dive, right? So you've mentioned about the guide diving together with the client, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Will that be a point because of this how safe the environment is that the client is enjoying himself in that deep dive? And will you know, do you actually able to see when the client needs help?
Client needs help. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the client asks for help, right?
Mm.
And oftentimes um, it is, as a coach, I am able to sense it and I validate it with the client saying that, if I have your permission, I am noticing this. And if you resonate with this, please share your resonance. If you don't, you can push back and stuff like that. So that's the nudge and the support or the pat that you can do maximum in the coaching space. What the client wants to do and how much the client wants to do is the decision the client takes, and I help them to make them realize that it is their choice and not their forced to do it. Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm hearing correctly from you, Johnny, is that you know you can give them a nudge, and you will have to assess based on years of coaching, right? Or your coaching experience. Then you're able to assess that, oh, okay, making a nudge to make sure that the client is safe,
Yeah.
and making sure that the client
Right.
wants to be helped
Right.
or not. Right.
Right. Yes.
Great. And that I believe will help the client to move forward
Yes.
from where they are to where they want to be slightly.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Thanks, Johnny. That was amazing conversations we had over the last 1 hour, right? And
Oh,
I
it's been
believe
1 hour? Okay.
yes,
I didn't realize it.
Time pass, right? When we deep dive so much, there's so much things to actually discover when that safe space we are creating for the client, and we talk about, what is this safe space look like in a coaching conversations, because in a coaching conversations and many times coaching sessions, the purpose is to bring the client from where they are to where they want to be.
Absolutely.
Ultimately, be it whether we achieve the ultimate goal, but it takes steps and it takes sessions, multiple sessions to achieve that. Because, like you say, that rapport and that process of the client being a frozen meat, toying, you know, and that toying requires the discovery, requires the exploration, and the coach himself, us, herself, is going to be that mirror with a detached emotions, so that we can be impartials in letting the client play along, in playing with the client, right,
Yeah.
together in that journey. Now,
Yes.
so over the last 1 hour, we'll be able to gain so much insights and experience, and I really thank Johnny, yourself, that we have talked about this safe space required every moment, and it needed most in coaching session. So I'm happy that everyone to share with you that we have such a great night and day today, that we bring the essence of coaching experience to you in every possible way. Though our platform, Happy Me Career has been live since last year, we want to perfect the experience every walkthroughs with you. And we have coaches on board the platform to assist you through in your major milestones. So if you can see now, everyone in the screen, there's this the link to our platform. You can go on and explore and start discovering and creating your journey with us. So that is why Johnny, us, James, all of us are in this platform, trying to help to bridge that master's mindset. Everyone, now go and look into the platform, and we look for you forward to seeing you at the platform. Great. Once again, thanks, Johnny. Thank you so much for your time tonight. And I believe that anyone who is going to watch this video again will actually receive a lot of experience, that kind of essence, that what we are talking about safe space, how we're going to achieve. It's not just about conversations to feel safe to talk to this person, but in coaching, we need to deep dive, right? That's all
Yes.
for tonight. Happy Me Career Coaching Initiatives, everyone. Stay tuned to next episode 16, because we'll be inviting an amazing lady, a professional, a HR professional herself, mentors to many. Now, who is that? Well, for you to know, for me to know, for you to find out. Take care,
Yes.
everyone. Stay safe. Good night, everyone. Good night, Johnny. Bye bye.
Good night. Good night. Good night, everybody. And thank you, Mavis, for having me here.
Great. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.